bow down to the king of the double-double, the emperor of the triple-double, the lord of the rebound, and now the man who stands alone with the longest double-double streak since the NBA-ABA merger. So long, Kevin Love. Domantas Sabonis stands alone, 54 straight double-doubles, while the Sacramento Kings are enjoying playing physical defense. They beat the Philadelphia 76ers 108-96, and you are listening to Locked On Kings.
You are Locked On Kings, your daily Sacramento Kings podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And now, ladies and gentlemen, it is that time. Time for another episode of Locked On Kings.
Hello and welcome into Locked On Kings, your podcast hub for Sacramento Kings coverage all season long. Today's episode is brought to you by Prize Picks, the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNBA and use code all lowercase LockedOnNBA for a first deposit match up to $100. My name is Matt George. I have the privilege of being your host here. I'm a Sacramento sports anchor and reporter for ABC 10 News and a shameless, obnoxious Domantas Sabonis supporter. If this were a regal court, I would be the little man that stands in the corner, blows the trumpet, and reads off the long list of titles anytime Domantas Sabonis sat in his throne. That is my job, and it's a self-appointed job because for some reason, as we've talked about a lot over the past 2 seasons, Domantas Sabonis does not get the respect he deserves, does not get the coverage that he deserves for the greatness that he has shown on the basketball floor and even off of it. So I'm going to do it for him. I'm going to do it for the NBA. I'm going to make sure somebody hears it. I'm going to make sure somebody is talking about it. I feel like it's just my duty at this point to, one, make sure that everybody is aware, everybody that is either bright enough, smart enough, or foolish enough at times to listen to me and listen to Locked On Kings, but also to make sure that we don't take what Domantas Sabonis is doing for granted, right? When you have 54 straight double-doubles, you almost expect it, right? All of us, when this double-double streak reached 40, we probably looked and saw, oh, Kevin Love's record is 53. Yep, Sabonis has got that into the bag. You might as well take permanent ink and mark 2 10-plus categories in points, rebounds, or assists, maybe even 3 at this point with the amount of triple-doubles that Domantas Sabonis is putting up there. But we cannot take this for granted. It is not easy what Sabonis is doing. He's that good. He's so good that we've become expectant of it, and he's so good that people have to go out of their way to ignore what he's doing or not recognize what he's doing. And you best believe we're going to talk about that on tonight's Locked On Kings podcast. 11 points on 5 freaking shots, by the way. He went 3 of 5 from the field. 13 rebounds, 10 assists, also a block. Like I mentioned, the longest double-double streak since the NBA-ABA merger, passing Kevin Love's 53. He's now at 54. And he has his 25th triple-double of the season, which leads all of the NBA, right? We cannot become desensitized to what Sabonis is doing, right? It's just, even though we expect it at this point, even though it's happened 54 straight nights or 54 straight games, we have to make sure it gets the recognition and it gets the, think about that for a second. A double-double is celebrated in the league and pointed out in the league because while it's not as rare as it used to be, it's a symbol of excellence in more than just one statistical category. It's a symbol of a significant impact on a game. For someone to do that basically nightly suggests that they are not just one of the best players in the league, they are an elite player, period, right? They're elite at their craft. Domantas Sabonis is that. And I've read off for you, seemingly after every single game over the course of the season, the unique and specific class of players that Domantas Sabonis has played himself into with his numbers. Guys like Wilt Chamberlain, Oscar Robertson, of course, Nikola Jokic, guys like that, right? This is the company that Domantas Sabonis has played his way into. He hasn't just been dropped into it. He hasn't been born into it, and he didn't get carried into it. Domantas Sabonis has played his way into the history books with the best of this game at the center position and even beyond that, right? So we cannot become desensitized with what Sabonis is doing. The last game that he did not have a double-double was back in November. Y'all, we're at the end of March. That's absurd. That's absurd that he's been playing that well and the streak is that long. So I have one question. Like I said, I'm going to be obnoxious about it. Where are the haters at? Where are the doubters at? Man, I went on social media tonight. I went on Twitter. I went on X and shout out like different publications, the NBA, NBA TV, like StatMuse. I saw a lot of different like publications that were putting out what Sabonis had done. But all these writers, all these NBA commentators, I'm not just talking about the ones, and we know who they are, that have been actively against Domantas Sabonis or have written ridiculous stuff like Sabonis was the most overrated player in the league coming into this season. That's an actual article that was on Bleacher Report. I'm not just talking about the Kevin O'Connors of the world who only speak out when Sabonis is struggling and having a bad game, but when he was having a good game would tippy-toe around giving him any sort of praise or always using the same stupid line, which is none of this matters until he does something in the playoffs, basing all of their opinions off of one playoff series, because that's really the only Sabonis basketball with the Kings that they've paid attention to, even though they claim to be NBA experts and NBA media that watch all games, not just the freaking Lakers. Yeah, right. But I'm talking about just NBA media members in general, period. I mean, we have Sam Amick here, so I know Sam Amick is paying attention to it and writing about it. We have Mark Spears here, so I know he's going to be talking about it, and he talks about it on TV. Shout out Kendrick Perkins for talking about Domantas Sabonis and being involved in the MVP conversation, which he absolutely deserves to be in based off the numbers that he's putting up. He's not going to win it, but he deserves to be in the conversation. And when Perkins brings that up, his co-hosts are laughing at him. Zach Lowe is laughing at him on TV because it's such an absurd idea to them because they're not paying attention. All these people, whether they're hating on Sabonis and trying to take away from what he's doing, or you call yourself a national media member, to not talk about this, to not mention it, to not give it the publicity, and not just that, to not appreciate it. You call yourself a basketball fan. In media, some people are assigned to NBA beats and NBA media because it's their job and they just do it. They're not necessarily diehard basketball fans. But most of us who get into this field, most of us who choose to cover the NBA and follow the NBA, do it because of our love of a game or a team or all of the above. What Domantas Sabonis is doing transcends him, transcends the Sacramento Kings. This is NBA history this man is making. This is something that might never, ever happen again. And yet, for so many people, it's crickets because it doesn't fit their narrative or because it's happening here in Sacramento and not in LA, Boston, or Miami, or another big market. Like, think about how this would be covered if it was Anthony Davis, Nikola Jokic, Victor Wembanyama that was doing this, right? Think about how many people would be talking about it, be front page or leading out of ESPN and SportsCenter, not just tonight, but for freaking weeks, right? Around the Horn would be talking about it. PTI would be talking about it. You see national writers talking about it, local writers talking about it, other teams acknowledging it. Like, think about if this was happening to one of those other stars, how it would be talked about and how it would be covered. But because it's Sabonis and here in Sacramento, again, I've seen some publications tweet about it, some tweet congratulations or just tweet out the fact and the history that Sabonis is making, but it doesn't go beyond that. It's ridiculous. And it speaks to the Sacramento side of things and the Domantas Sabonis bias, right? It goes all the way back to when the Kings made the trade, sending Tyrese Halliburton to the Pacers for Domantas Sabonis. People chose the side of the Pacers and said the Kings are foolish for making this trade. It's not going to work. Then they dogpiled on that playoff series where Domantas Sabonis played fine. He got outplayed by Looney, but he played fine in that series. They latch onto these two things, and they won't change their narrative or change their perspective on what he is doing because they're too stubborn to admit that, hey, maybe you were wrong. Or maybe, just maybe, a whole career isn't defined by a trade or defined by one playoff series, right? I've talked about this already longer than I wanted to, but it frustrates the hell out of me because this deserves to get national attention. And I'm very, very happy that Kevin Love acknowledged it on social media. Shout out K-Love. I'm happy that of the people that are talking about it and are recognizing it. And I don't know if it matters to Domantas Sabonis. I doubt it matters to Sabonis as much as it matters to me. I know it matters to a lot of Kings fans, but this is massive what has happened tonight. And I'm just scrolling through Twitter. I'm looking on social media. I'm just not seeing the response that it deserves to get. Sabonis has been unbelievable. Like I mentioned, the 25 triple-doubles, right? There have only been 3 centers in NBA history to record 25 or more triple-doubles in a season. Wilt Chamberlain, he won the MVP that year. Nikola Jokic, he was second in the MVP voting that year. Domantas Sabonis, who is laughed when brought up in an MVP conversation and wasn't even named an All-Star. We're talking about the biggest All-Star snub of all time. It's not even close. Domantas Sabonis is putting up numbers this season that put him with the elite of the position and the elite of the game itself. And he was not selected as an All-Star. He was not recognized by his coaches and by the fans of the league as being one of the best at his position or one of the best in the league, period. They better correct that when it comes to all NBA teams, because I am sorry, there is not more than 2 centers in this freaking league that are better than Domantas Sabonis. And quite honestly, unfortunately, with the amount of time that Joel Embiid has missed, I think Domantas Sabonis deserves to be all NBA second team ahead of Joel Embiid. It's for this season. It's circumstantial. I'm not saying Sabonis is a better center than Joel Embiid is. When healthy, Joel is definitely an MVP candidate, MVP caliber center, and Sabonis can't do the things that Joel Embiid can do. But for this season, if you want to say there's one center better than Domantas Sabonis, I'll give you Nikola Jokic. There is not another center who is better than Sabonis this season and is doing more this season than Domantas Sabonis is doing. So you better get that right, NBA, because you screwed the pooch. You screwed it up big time when it came to the All-Star selection. Domantas Sabonis, Mike Brown, and Davion Mitchell, all 3 of them spoke about Sabonis' accomplishment after the game. Here's what they had to say.
It's an honor. You're in the history books, of the NBA, the best league in the world. So obviously, it's amazing. It's a great feeling. But at the same time, I'm happy it's over. These last couple of weeks, everyone's been mentioning it, and I'm just out there, trying to play my game and help this team win.
And then you get honored like that in front of the crowd. You have your teammates. Mike Brown comes over, gives you a hug. Just what's kind of going on in that moment? I know you're so locked in on the game, but were you able to kind of enjoy that moment?
Of course, it's pretty awesome. I thank the fans for doing that. It's awesome to get that support and feel loved here. That's why I love it here. And I want to keep playing here.
Shout out to Domas. Man, what a job to break a record. That's been there since the ABA-NBA merger. What a phenomenal year he's having. Obviously, he should have been an all-star. Obviously, he should be talked about for first, second, third, all-NBA. And he should even be in the MVP discussions with the way that he's playing. This is also his 25th triple-double or something like that. 25th triple-double. He's up there with guys like Oscar Robertson. There's only 4 other players that do it. Oscar Robertson, Jokic, Bill Russell, and Russell Westbrook. And well, I mean that is unfreaking believable. So Domas, hell of a job, buddy. That is big time, and I hope he gets a lot of praise because it's definitely well deserved.
It's amazing, especially for Domas. How hard he works. But he was in the locker room. He's a humble guy. Domas is like the most humble guy ever. He just said we just got to keep winning games. He didn't really acknowledge that what he did was an amazing deal in this league. But it's amazing to see him do it. Especially to be on the same team with him. It's a blessing.
I'll get this one more thing out of the way, addressing the people who are disrespecting Sabonis or aren't willing to give him the respect that he deserves. If you don't want to tweet about it, if you don't want to talk about it tonight, if you don't want to acknowledge Sabonis making history tonight, that's fine. Whatever. But you better keep that same energy in the playoffs, because you will be the lowest of the low to me if you do not if you choose to ignore and not acknowledge what Sabonis is doing. But if he struggles at any point during the playoffs, you're going to tweet out, see, what did I tell you? Sabonis not a good playoff player. This is blah, 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 blah. If that's you, you're a coward. I'll just say that straight up. You are a coward, and you're just picking and choosing to support your argument, which is absolutely ridiculous. You're supposed to be unbiased. That's about as biased as it can be. I wear my biasness on my sleeve. I know that I am a Sacramento Kings homer and a Domantas Sabonis homer, but I'm also recognizing the history that is happening in front of me, and I'm fortunate enough to be watching it every single night. You're really only depriving yourselves. And I swear to God, if you are the one of those people that is not talking about Sabonis or not willing to give him the respect that he deserves or the attention that he deserves or the praise that he deserves for the history that he has made tonight, but you're going to be the first to tweet out or write something or record a video or say something if Sabonis and the Kings get to the playoffs and Sabonis struggles again, you're not worth my time. Today's episode of the Locked On Kings podcast is brought to you by my good friends at Sackyard Community Tap House. We are now less than a week away from the first ever Locked On Kings live show, where I'm going to be joined at Sackyard by Gary Gerould and Jerry Reynolds, two legends in the Sacramento broadcast scene when it comes to Kings basketball. Of course, Jerry Reynolds, a former coach. G-Man Gary Gerould has been here the entire time that the Sacramento Kings have been here. I'm very excited to have these two legends join me for this first ever show. So appreciative to them for being willing to do it. There's no tickets. You don't have to pay any money. Just come by Sackyard. 6 p.m. is when the show starts, or roughly around 6 p.m. Come by, have some drinks, sit down, listen to some stories, and also bring some questions, because there's going to be an open mic question portion of the show for you to be able to ask G-Man and Jerry some questions. So be aware of that. Keep an eye out for that. Very excited about that. And if you're not familiar with Sackyard, you need to be, because Sackyard Community Tap House is the best place for you to go, whether it's watching Kings games or just going out to enjoy a drink in downtown Sacramento. They have an amazing selection of beers and local wines on tap for you to try. It's encouraged that you bring your family, including your family with tails. Your dogs are very welcome as well. They have an outdoor patio that's perfect all year round. We'll be out there for the live show. Also an indoor area with TVs for you to watch games and stuff like that. Sackyard is your home for the Locked On Kings listener. Today's episode of the Locked On Kings podcast is also brought to you by Robinhood. Did you know that even if you have a 401k for retirement, you can still have an IRA? Robinhood has the only IRA that gives you a 3% boost on every dollar you contribute when you subscribe to Robinhood Gold. But get this, now through April 30th, Robinhood is even boosting every single dollar you transfer in from other retirement accounts with a 3% match. That's right, no cap on the 3% match. Robinhood Gold gets you the most for your retirement thanks to their IRA with a 3% match. This offer is good through April 30th. Get started at Robinhood.com/boost. Subscription fees apply. And now for some legal info, claims as of Q1 2024, validated by Radius Global Market Research. Investing involves risk, including loss. Limitations apply to IRAs and 401ks. 3% match requires Robinhood Gold for 1 year from the date of the first 3% match. Must keep Robinhood IRA for 5 years. The 3% matching on transfers is subject to specific terms and conditions. Robinhood IRA, available to U.S. customers in good standing. Robinhood Financial LLC, member SIPC, is a registered broker-dealer. How many of you are enjoying this defense that the Sacramento Kings are playing? Now, I know, as Sacramento Kings fans, we're naturally drawn to the offensive side of things. And the offense has not been as great over the last handful of games, really last 8 or so games, even this month of March, really, as we expect it to. They've had some high-scoring games, but for the most part, what the Kings have been winning and the success that the Kings have found as of late, really in these last 8 games, are these grinded out, physical style of games that are low scoring. It's what Mike Brown says is how playoff basketball is more than likely going to be. And for the most part, during that best-of-7 series, he was proven right against the Golden State Warriors last year. Check this out. In the last 8 games that the Kings have played, they have held their opponents under 110 points all 8 straight games, right? But even beyond that, in 4 out of the 8 games, they've held their opponents under 100 points. For perspective, in the first 63 games, they only did that 5 times. This Kings team has figured something out on the defensive end of the floor. And even more than that, it really looks like they're enjoying playing their physical style. Once again, this was a very physical, grinded out game that the Kings played against the 76ers tonight. And for the most part, dominated against the 76ers tonight. There are teams that have brought it to Sacramento physically that Sacramento has struggled with. The Houston Rockets are one of the first that come to mind. The New Orleans Pelicans did a really good job of that as well. Early on in this season, when a team would come to the table with physicality, Sacramento would bend and sometimes break and fold because of that physicality. They did not look ready for it, right? In these last 8 games, the Kings are the ones initiating the physicality. Granted, the New York Knicks also brought some physicality to the table, but the Kings matched them step for step. It just took a 42 or whatever it was point performance from Jalen Brunson to carry the Knicks to the victory in that game. And that was one of the only games, actually it is the only game that the Kings have lost this season when holding an opponent under 100 points. You're not always going to win by playing this brand of basketball, right? But the Sacramento Kings have shown a desire to play physical, a willingness to play in physical, now an enjoyment playing a physical brand of basketball, and it's resulting in maybe lower offensive numbers, but overall a higher success rate, right? Again, this is what playoff basketball is, in theory, supposed to be and going to be. And Mike Brown has been preaching that consistently. It looks and it feels legit, right? It's still 8 games out of 71. Even though these 8 games have been really good defensively, it's not good enough to erase where the Sacramento Kings were for the first 2/3 of the season, right? It's not going to put them in the top of NBA's defenses, even though for the month of March, the Kings are like a top 3, top 4 defense right now, which is awesome. But that's the month of March. You don't get to ignore October, November, December, January, and February, where for the most part, Sacramento offensively really, really struggled. It is a small sample size given the full season's context. That being said, this feels like they figured something out. And more importantly, it feels like the team has now fully bought in or significantly bought into what Mike Brown has been preaching and the physical style of defense that Mike has been asking for this team to play, because it takes effort, right? It takes initiative. It takes energy. It takes a willingness to be able to make the extra effort to put your body on the line, to draw a charge, to move your feet and take an offensive player to the chest and make sure they don't get to the basket, to give your all on a closeout on the perimeter to make sure an opponent doesn't get an open 3, right? It takes an extra level, a level that maybe is easy to come up with in a playoff series when so much is on the line and there's the energy of the stage in the moment, but it's difficult to come up with on a Monday night game against the 76ers at home when you're 71 games into a regular season, right? And yet over these 8 games, the Kings have consistently brought that effort, energy, and intensity to the table. It feels legit. It feels like they figured something out, and more importantly, there has been a full buy-in because the players have recognized, wow, we can play this way. The officials, to some extent, are allowing this style of play a little bit more now that the playoffs are getting closer and closer. And we're seeing that we can push people around and we can be a pretty damn good basketball team by playing this way. It really looks like the Sacramento Kings are ready for playoff basketball. They haven't guaranteed it, right? They're not sitting in a 3rd seed right now like they were at this time last year. They have a massive game coming up tomorrow against the Dallas Mavericks, which we'll talk about and get into a little bit more. But if/when they do get to the playoffs, if this is the style of basketball that the Sacramento Kings are going to be able to play consistently, I'm not saying they're absolutely winning and making it out of the first round, because they're going to be underdogs as a lower seed against a top seed in the West, but they're not going to be an easy out. And I think that's part of the goal, right? Mike obviously has his sights set on winning a playoff series and then another, and the Kings want to try and make as long of a run as possible. And if they didn't believe they could win a championship, why would they even step on the floor in the first place, right? So obviously they have more ambitions than just winning one playoff series or being a tough out in the first round like they were last year with the Golden State Warriors. But I think the Kings can hang and play with anybody if they're and it's not just completely reliant on the offensive end. The Kings can hang with anybody without having to score 115 points a night. Last season, it was if the Kings didn't score 115 points a night, they might have been in a little bit of trouble. This season, at least as of right now, the Kings are showing, hey, we can score 108 and win a game by 12, and it's not a fluke night because we're holding teams under 100 points 50% of the last 8 games that we've played. That's pretty incredible. It's awesome to see. A good example of that is Tyrese Maxey tonight, right? Tyrese Maxey looked like he was going for 50 or 60 points. He was unbelievable to start this game. 21 points in the first quarter. He was lights out shooting. He scored 8 points for the rest of the game, including just 3 points in the second half. Like, the Kings defense clamped the heck down on Tyrese Maxey. And one guy in particular made a big difference. I'm not talking about Keon Ellis. Keon Ellis actually started this game guarding Maxey, and I didn't think Keon was getting torched. Maxey was just playing a hell of a game to start, and we've seen him do it a lot this season. He's had a handful of 50 bombs this year with Philly. Like, Tyrese Maxey is that dude. Keon wasn't playing terrible defense. He got into a little bit of foul trouble. Davion Mitchell came into this game, and we saw off night. He came into this game and changed Tyrese's flow really the minute he stepped on the floor. Davion Mitchell won the Defensive Player of the Game crown tonight. No surprise there. I mean, that's his bread and butter. But on top of that, 18 points, 6 of 9 shooting from the field, 3 of 4 from three-point range, along with a couple of blocks. Davion Mitchell, this might have been the best game of Davion Mitchell's career. He was on it tonight. He looked fantastic. He was shooting with confidence. The Kings were hitting him in transition for threes. They were hitting him with open looks. He was taking them again without hesitation. Davion Mitchell was excellent. And again, it feels like each of these guys are getting their own special, unique confidence because Mike is finding ways to play them all simultaneously and not have one go up against another, right? I know there's competitiveness amongst a team and amongst getting playing time, and there's only so many minutes and only so many roster spots available, right, and so many rotational spots available. But no longer is it Keon versus Davion for minutes, right? It also kind of helps, unfortunately, that Kevin Huerter got hurt, that these minutes are more available. But like I've talked about a lot over this month of March, Mike Brown has figured out how to stagger a 3-guard lineup out there, and it's working on both ends of the floor. That has allowed Davion Mitchell to play enough recently to where he's built confidence on both ends to where he can have a night like tonight. We know Keon Ellis is playing with confidence the way that he's been playing. Malik Monk, De'Aaron Fox, go down the list of guards that are coming in and making a big impact for Sacramento right now. I mean, it just speaks volumes. Davion Mitchell tonight was absolutely fantastic. Now let's hear from Davion, Coach Brown, and Domantas Sabonis about the defense that this team's been playing. 4 of the last 8 games, y'all have held your opponent under 100 points. I know there's kind of scrappy physical game, but it almost seems like you guys are thriving in that right now. What's changed with this group?
I think we're just being more physical. I think, especially with the lead not really calling that many fouls, we get to be more physical. Even Mike told us that we get to be more physical throughout the game. Because they're not really calling the ticky-tack fouls no more. So I think that's what we're doing. We're always got our hand on a teammate. We always got each other back, and I think that's what we're doing.
Mike, 4 of the last 8 games, you've held your opponent under 100 points. It now seems like the physical style, almost the team is thriving in it a little bit. Have you seen a switch being flipped specifically? It almost looks like, again, your guys are enjoying playing that style right now.
Yeah, they do, and they're talking about it a ton. So now I'm not the only one talking about it. They're really talking about it in the locker room, which is good. And I said this analogy before. We're going to talk defense, but we know we're a good offensive team, and we're going to be able to find a way to score points. But at the end of the day, the more that we embrace defending, that's the better chance we're going to have, because now we don't put as much pressure on us to make the wide open shot or to make this play or to make that play. We can play free while knowing that, hey, if we buckle down, we're going to be all right, because we can get 110 easy. We can get 115 or 112 pretty easy with the guys we have. But we can't give that up because we might not always get 122, So it's fun when your team embraces that side of the floor, especially when they're as talented offensively as they are.
Domas, 4 of the last 8 games, you've held your opponents under 100 points. It seems like now the physicality, the team is almost enjoying playing that way. Do you agree with that? I know you've always played physical, but do you think this team is really embracing that side?
Yeah, of course. I think it helps us. We are a physical team, and they are letting us be more physical. So that definitely plays in hand, and it's fun. It's fun to play like that. Those are the games that you're going to see in the postseason. So the fact that we can be playing like this now and preparing for that is pretty cool.
Today's episode of the Locked On Kings podcast is also brought to you by eBay Motors. Passion, drive, and patience. What brings home the winning trophy is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. From superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has got you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not burning cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to turn your car into the MVP and bring home that win. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit only available to U.S. customers. Today's episode of the Locked On Kings podcast is brought to you by Prize Picks. Prize Picks is America's #1 fantasy sports app with over 3 million members. It's the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Just you against the numbers. You pick more or less on 2 to 6 player stat projections and watch the winnings roll in. Prize Picks offers something that you won't find anywhere else. We're talking about injury insurance, so that if your entry stays in play, even if one of your players gets injured. For example, like a basketball example, let's say the night that Kevin Huerter got hurt, right? You picked Kevin Huerter to score more than 7.5 points. Well, he gets hurt in the first quarter. They're not going to penalize you for that. Essentially, that's a push or that's a wash. So they remove it. They adjust the pay scale based off of how many others you have to get right in order to win, but it's not going to hurt you and kind of screw you over. Prize Picks is the only daily fantasy sports platform with an insurance policy. Prize Picks is really simple to play. You can make your picks and submit them in less than 60 seconds. They offer quick withdrawals, easy gameplay, and enormous selection of players and stat types. It's what makes Prize Picks the #1 daily fantasy sports app. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNBA and use code LockedOnNBA for a first deposit match up to $100. Prize Picks. Pick more. Pick less. It's that easy. As good of a first quarter as Tyrese Maxey had, how great was Keegan Murray to start this game too, right? 17 of his 23 points came right out of the gate. I love the aggressiveness that Keegan Murray played with to start this game. He shot 9 of 20 from the field tonight. I bring that up because, one, it's a decent shooting percentage, just under 50%, but taking 20 shots. Before the game started, I actually asked Mike Brown about Keegan Murray because he came off of that super efficient 6 of 7 3-point shooting night with his big game in Orlando. And I was asking him about the balance of him scoring a lot off of super efficient shooting because there's only so many shots to go around and so many mouths to feed on offense versus him saying, you know what, give me the ball. It's my night. I'm going to take 16, 17, 18, maybe 20 shots. And here he is on a 20-shot night where he wasn't amazing. He scored over 20 points. And again, the number for me is if you can consistently get 17-plus points out of Keegan Murray basically every single night from now through the playoffs, Sacramento's in really, really good shape. So he gave you that. And it wasn't the greatest of shooting percentages, but he was looking for his shot. He was in attack mode from the very beginning. I still would have liked to have seen him get more looks and more opportunities, and the Kings try and continue his hot hand from the first quarter throughout the rest of the game because he definitely cooled off like Maxey did. Of course, the 76ers also adjusted their defense, but overall, I thought Keegan Murray's start to this game was fantastic. Quick shout out to the San Antonio Spurs tonight for beating the Phoenix Suns. That's a win that I did not see coming because the Suns' schedule is really brutal after this game. So this was kind of a game they had to have. They lost it because of that. They fell out of the 6th spot all the way down to 8th. The Kings now in 6th with the win tonight. Unfortunately, the Dallas Mavericks did beat the Utah Jazz tonight. So the Dallas Mavericks right there behind the Kings in 7th technically, but both teams are 8 or 8.5 games back of that first spot. They're basically neck and neck, which leads us into these 2 massive games starting tomorrow night. Kings and Mavericks on Tuesday, Kings and Mavericks on Friday. 2 monumental games. I'm nervous, but I'm so excited. Domantas Sabonis is basically calling it a mini playoff series. So buckle up and get ready because these games are going to be stressful, but it's what you want at this time of the year, right? This is what basketball, late season basketball is all about. I know the NBA is excited for these games. Commissioner Adam Silver was in the Golden One Center tonight, which is pretty cool. I know he won't be there for tomorrow night's game, but happy to have him here. I'm very excited for these games. I'm nervous as all hell, don't get me wrong. If the Kings win tomorrow, regardless of what happens on Friday, they get the tiebreaker over the Mavericks, which could be huge. So the Kings need to just get one of these two games. If they lose both of them, they're in a rough spot. But just get one of these two games and get that win out of the way tomorrow. In fact, Mike Brown, Domantas Sabonis, and Davion Mitchell all talked about the preparations for tomorrow night's game. Here's what they said.
No, we've already been working on it. It starts with our advanced scout, Dan Hartfield. He's saw him probably a couple of times already and sent his report in. And I don't know whose game it is, but, the offensive side of the ball and defensive side of the ball have already been taken care of. We'll meet as a staff tomorrow and talk about them and get ready for the game. So the preparation has already started. We all know it's important. It's one of the things I said in the locker room. If we can find a way to get this win, then obviously we'll have the tiebreaker, which is really important. So tomorrow is a big game for us, and I think everybody knows it. Dallas knows it too. It's a big game for them, so it should be fun.
Yeah, we got to forget about today. We got to get healthy, and be ready for tomorrow. We need the tiebreaker against them. We play them in a back-to-back sense at home, so it's kind of a playoff series, and we got to come in locked in like we have been these last couple of games.
But I think tomorrow, we got to come out with energy. I think that the past back-to-backs, we didn't come out with energy. We kind of tried to play catch-up throughout the end of the game, and we failed. And I think tomorrow we just need to come out with energy like we did tonight, punch them in the mouth, and go from there.
Can't wait for Kings and Mavericks tomorrow night. Of course, you can join me on tomorrow night's post-game episode of Locked On Kings, win or lose. I'll have an episode for you here from the Golden One Center, so I can't wait to see you then. Until then, my name is Matt George. You've been listening to the Locked On Kings podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network.